Four Eagles in the NFL Combine. How did they do? Did they help their stock? Did they hurt it? We'll talk about it.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. Thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen. We are the only daily Boston College podcast. If you want your expert analysis, you are in the right place. Thank you for joining us today. On today's show, we're going to talk about the NFL Combine. Four Eagles have finished their workouts, have done their interviews. We're going to talk to Mitch Wolfe about the competition, how things went, and how they ended up looking. And let's bring on Mitch from Eagle Insider. Mitchell Wolfe, how's it going?
Going well. Excited to talk about all this. Got a lot of good information from this weekend, and I think things are looking pretty good for all of our former Eagles that are heading off to the NFL. At least the ones that were in Indianapolis.
So 4 Boston College players were there, and the one that got the most publicity is Donovan Ezeiruaku. Mm-hmm. And he went into the weekend with some buzz about being a first round draft pick. There was some people, it's a very talent rich position, but after 16 and a half sacks, big season, he looked to be the kind of guy after the Senior Bowl that right at that edge where where he could either be a first round draft pick or right at the edge of the second round. Where do you think talk about his performance, what stood out to you, and kind of where he stands?
Well, I think it kind of starts with him not running the 40, which is obviously the biggest event at the Combine, and that's the one that they spend the most time televising. It's really the only drill they televise anymore. They don't even show the jumps live or the 3-cone and short shuttle live. They just kind of tell you what the results are, and then they show you the positional drills. But he did almost everything else and performed exceptionally well. He measured in at 6'2.5", 248 pounds, which was to be expected. His arm length was 34 inches, and his hand size was 9.25. His arm length was a little bit down from the Senior Bowl, but if you looked at everybody that was at a all-star event, whether it was Senior Bowl, Shrine Game, what have you, pretty much all of their arms were a half inch to an inch shorter, which is weird, and a lot of wingspans were shorter. For some reason, Donovan, his wingspan was longer, but his arms were shorter. I don't know how that works, but I digress. Anyways, back to the drills. I thought he performed really well. If you look at some of the numbers, I believe I sent you some images we can put up for the YouTube audience.
Yep.
I'll show all the numbers. So this is Donovan Ezeiruaku's relative athletic score profile, and this is made and maintained by Kent Lee Platt, aka @MathBomb. And basically what this does is it takes all the combine numbers, contextualizes them with the historical numbers for everybody at the position, and then adjusts them based on the size of the player. So if you look at this, you've got a 35.5-inch vertical, which is in the 87th percentile, a 9-foot 11-inch broad jump, which is the 80th, 81st percentile, a 4.19 second short shuttle, which is in the 96th percentile, and a 6.94 second 3-cone drill, which is in the 96th percentile as well. Those last two, the agility drills, Donovan Ezeiruaku had the best of any edge defender and better than any linebacker that participated in those drills at the Combine. Now, as I said before on last week's episode, not a lot of players participate in those. I think 17 defensive linemen participated in them. So not that many, because they know that it can be kind of a death sentence if you perform badly. And now the next image that's on the screen is Donovan Ezeiruaku's profile if you switch it to him as a linebacker, because it's defensive end linebacker. It doesn't go by edge rusher, which is the better term. But anyways, in this one, his RAS is even better because his size is actually quite good for a linebacker. His RAS score, which is out of 10, goes up to 9.83. Again, these numbers are all the same. The short shuttle and 3-cone, their percentiles go down a little bit, but this is an elite RAS score for a linebacker, which is more so what Donovan Ezeiruaku is going to play, even though his duties will be that of an edge rusher. So going into the Combine, I mentioned how Donovan Ezeiruaku may not be an elite athlete or a great athlete, but a good one. And I think that this kind of solves some of those problems that teams may have. Obviously, it doesn't run the 40. That's not, or teams put varying importance on that. But I think his elite performance in the agility drills are really going to impress teams, because that's something that when you watch him, you see how well he's able to move and change direction in short spaces without any wasted motion. And watching one of the drills, and I think Brett Coleman of Underdog Fantasy / Bootleg Football posted this video where it was Donovan Ezeiruaku doing this. There's 4 bags on the turf, and they're all parallel with each other, and he kind of have to basically you like run, you step over them, and then you kind of run in between them, but you stay facing forward the whole time. And he shows it. He says, if you look at Donovan Ezeiruaku's hips, they stay at the same level the entire time. So while Donovan Ezeiruaku may not be like the fastest or even the most explosive, because his jumps were good, not elite or anything, and because there were some elite numbers by guys like Shamar Stewart, Landon Jackson, but his body control, at even though he's a smaller player, is really incredible, and I think that is going to help assuage these concerns about him as an athlete. And I think that based on everything he did, and assuming he did pretty well in the interviews, I think that's kind of generally who he is as a player. I think he's pretty much solidified himself as a first-round pick.
So looking at the different scores here, just for your viewers at home that may not understand a little bit, or maybe just need a little clarification, he played edge, which is kind of like a hybrid of defensive end and linebacker.
It's basically just to say, like, whoever is playing defensive end, and it's regardless of whether they're in a 2-point stance standing up or in a 3-point stance with the hand in the dirt.
Okay, so what did he play more? He played more like I mean, I've listened to him.
I would say linebacker,
right?
Yeah.
So he played linebacker, which I think is crazy because didn't he win the Hendricks for edge rusher? Which
it's defensive end, but again, all these terms are kind of
semantics, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Semantics. Okay, so he ends up he's potentially a first-round pick. What other edge rushers are going to probably go ahead of him? It's going to obviously Abdul Carter of Penn State's probably going to get there. Obviously going to get there. What other ones do you I know you mentioned a few. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other ones that you think will probably go ahead of him?
I think Jalen Walker, who's he's interesting because he's a linebacker from Georgia, and he's only 6'1", 243, but he's probably going to be an edge rusher, but he has a very kind of unorthodox build for it, but that's just what he's better at. He'll probably go before Shamar Stewart, the edge from Texas A&M, who is just an absolute athletic freak. At 6'5", 267, he had some just insane numbers up. So he's probably going to be he's going to be a top 10 pick. After that, I think there's a good chance you see Donovan be the third or fourth edge rusher off the board, depending on how you qualify Jalen Walker. Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, has a lot of fans, but I do think that teams are going to be worried about his off-field problems. He had a sexual assault allegation in high school and then another one at Virginia that basically got him kicked off Virginia's football team. And he sat out a year and then ended up at Marshall. And he had great production at Marshall, but he's only really played the position for 2 years. He had a better bench press than Donovan Ezeiruaku. I will say that he had 28 reps. I think Donovan had 22, which is tougher for Donovan because as a smaller edge rusher, when you have longer arms, it's harder to get the bench up, lock out, and then bring it back down as many times. And Mike Green has only 32-inch arms, but a lot of his production came against bad offensive tackles. Again, he has shorter arms. We didn't see him test the combine, so I think that he's kind of up in the air. Looking at some other names, I'm trying to think. That's really it. I think James Pierce, the edge rush from Tennessee, is falling. He has some off-field concerns as well. I don't think the Ohio State edge rushers, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, will go in the first. Probably not Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss. So yeah, I think Donovan has done excellent during this draft process. And it's really hard for me to see him not going the first round. I saw tweets from Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network, of Trevor Sikkema from PFF, Dean Brugel from The Athletic, all saying, Donovan Ezeiruaku has done everything and deserves to be a first-round pick at this point.
All right, let's just have a little fun here. Let's throw you your projections out there. Pick a team. Who's going to draft him?
I feel like I've seen a lot of stuff about Tampa Bay liking him, and I think they picked 19th overall. I think they need some edge rusher help. They need another guy there. It's interesting because they typically really like big athletic freaks, but they kind of went away from that when they took Kalijah Kancey in the first round a year or two ago. He was an athletic freak, but he was a very small defensive tackle from Pitt. So that's one that I've kind of heard some rumblings about, and that's about in the range where I could see him going, because I would say with this class, you've got the elite guys, you've got your Travis Hunters, your Abdul Carters, the two quarterbacks, Ashton Genty, maybe Tyler Warren. And then there's kind of a mess of guys, maybe like 10 guys that are the next level. And after that, it really opens up. After that, like, top 15 guys, it really opens up where teams will have guys stacked differently. So I think there's a good chance you see Donovan Ezeiruaku even become a top 20 pick in the first round.
All right. In a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk about the offensive linemen. Drew Kendall and Ozzy Trapillo both had their workouts. Did they help? Did they hurt? Where are they standing? We'll talk all about that in just a moment. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trade, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always get talk to a real person. And the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here, and I'm joined by Eagle Insider writer Mitchell Wolfe. We're talking about the NFL Draft Combine. It's over. It completed on Monday with the bench press for the offensive linemen. And the offensive linemen we want to talk about today are Ozzy Trapillo and Drew Kendall. Who do you want to talk about first? Want to talk about Ozzy first?
Yeah, let's talk about Ozzy because I think his will be a little more interesting.
All right, let me get his draft card up. I thought I put him in order, but there we go.
All right. So for Ozzy, he comes in at 6'8" and 1/8 of an inch, 316 pounds, dropped a few pounds since the Senior Bowl, somehow added a few eighths of an inch. So he's over 6'8", which is crazy. I think him and Holland Pierce from Rutgers are the two tallest tackles in this class. Holland Pierce is like 345 pounds. He's an absolute monster. But the thing with Ozzy here is 33-inch arms. I think they were a little longer at the Senior Bowl, and that's fine for, I would say, some teams, maybe most teams. Generally, teams want most if not all teams want their offensive tackle set of arms that are 32 inches or longer. Some teams cut it off at 34, some are at 33, some don't really care. But generally, you want your offensive tackles to have longer arms because then they can keep opponents further away, not allow them to get in their chest, and not allow them to control them and get by them. And typically with players that are taller, offense tackles who are taller, you see longer arms. Sometimes it doesn't happen. For example, there were two guys, Armand Membu, offense tackle from Missouri, who's 6'4" and change and has like 34-inch arms and change. And then Donovan Jackson, who's a guard from Ohio State, who's 6'3", has 34 and change inch arms. So there's obviously variance, but generally taller means longer arms. For Ozzy's drills, he competed in everything except the vertical jump. I imagine he thought he wouldn't do well there. Taller guys, again, for that, it's kind of a crapshoot. Some of them, it's just hard for them to compress their body all the way down and then get all the way back up quickly. But the good news is in his 40-yard dash, he ran a 5.21 seconds, which is fine for a big offense tackle. But his 10-yard split, which is the first 10 yards, was 1.7 seconds. And that is in the 83rd percentile, which is very good, especially for a big offensive tackle like that. He also competed in the agility drills. He ran a 4.70 in the shuttle, which was in the 69th percentile, and 7.71 seconds in the three cone, which is in the 71st percentile. Again, pretty good numbers for a guy of that size. It's not going to blow you away, but still pretty solid. And it's, again, a credit that they actually competed in those drills because you usually don't see big guys, especially offensive tackles like that, compete in the drill. He had an 8-foot, 10-inch broad jump, which is almost in the 70th percentile, and put 22 reps on the bench, which is in the 51st percentile. Not a great number there, but again, still he does have some longer arms. I imagine him and Kendall were both training more for the athletic testing, positional drills and stuff like that. The bench press maybe kind of fell by the wayside in their training, and still a solid number, but that number's not going to blow you away. Overall, I thought he competed pretty well, looked smooth in the drills. I think Ozzy's, again, kind of like Eziraku, helping him. You see a good profile here. In terms of his overall RAS, you got to the 8.70, which, only one of his numbers was great, which was the 10-yard split. But because they're all solid, and for a guy of his size, that's what bumps him up into a 8.7 RAS, which is a great RAS score.
So, excuse me. When you're looking at Ozzy's scores, he's obviously not a first round draft pick, but is this a guy that's day 2, second, third round, or
I think so. Yeah, I think so. There's, again, kind of like edge rusher. There's a lot of offensive tackles in that second tier. There's probably like 4 or 5 guys that are like looking at first round possibilities. Then there's another mess of 8 to 10 that are in that top 100, top 75 range. So I think you could see Ozzy get in the second round. He's kind of unique in this class because a lot of the top tackles, even like a guy like Will Campbell from LSU, a lot of them are saying, "Hey, like kick him inside the guard," because they're either not as good in pass protection as a tackle, or like Will Campbell, they have shorter arms. And Ozzy at 6'8", you're not playing a guy who's 6'8" at guard. And even though he does have relatively shorter arms for the position, I think he's one of the few guys where it's like you are going to play tackle. We are not going to kick you inside the guard. And he's played both tackle positions. He's pretty good at it. So I think there will be teams that are tackle needy that will want him and be like, okay, we know this guy is going to play tackle and can play it, so we might value him more highly than some of these guys where it's like we don't really know if they're a tackle or a guard.
I was going to say he talked about that in his interviews. I saw that he said, they asked him about his positional versatility and playing in his specifically at tackle, playing both tackles, and how valuable that will be. Now let's move on to Drew Kendall. Drew Kendall, let me get him up here for you. And Drew is our final one with a card, and I love these. Who is Math Bomb again? Tell us a little.
Kent Lee Platt. He just a fan of the combine and math and numbers, kind of somewhat like myself. But he's been doing this for a long time. He has like tens of thousands of players in his database. It's not just combine info; it's from pro days and everything. So it's a really great resource. It's not, I would say, it's not perfect and it's not perfectly predictive of stuff, but it's a good standardizing metric where you can look at players. And I feel like I've heard that some teams actually use this, and if they don't use this exact one, they have a somewhat similar formula that allows you to contextualize athletic testing based on size. So for Drew Kendall, comes in at 6'4.25", 308 pounds. Yeah, he's still putting on weight. I think at the Shrine Bowl he was 303 or 304, so he's putting on weight, which is good. Shorter arms again, 31 and 3/4 inches. It's not as big of a problem for centers because usually defensive tackles don't have as long of arms. So that's okay. Good numbers he did not compete in the jumps, but he did do the 40 and the agility drills. He ran a 5.05 second 40, which is in the 90th percentile, with a 1.79 10-yard split, which is in the 72nd percentile, so not as good, a little surprising. But in the agility drills, he was really good. Ran a 4.51 second short shuttle, which was 90th percentile, and a 7.56 3-cone drill, which is in the 82nd percentile. And those make sense given how well Kendall moves, again, in short spaces, where how good of a puller he is. That really tracks with these agility numbers. The one area where he wasn't good was the bench press. He had 20 reps, which is in the 19th percentile, which, again, I've said, Kendall's big bugaboo is just that he does not have a lot of play strength. He gets kind of thrown around a bit by bigger, stronger defensive tackles. And I think it would have been very surprising if he had like destroyed the bench press. I think that would have come at the cost of performing worse the other drills. Like, if he would have had to spend his entire time training for that. And ultimately the bench press itself, doesn't necessarily lead to success. So I think he was smart to focus on the other tests. Teams know that play strength is not necessarily one of his strengths. Forget the pun. And they know that when he comes to the NFL, they're going to need to get him on a pretty aggressive strength conditioning program to help him add some muscle and gain some more play strength so he can be better against bigger, stronger nose tackles. And then his overall relative athletic score is 9.09. So again, 91st percentile, good size for the center, and very good testing numbers for him across the board.
And I'm going to throw you like a question you may not even be prepared to ask. How different was this RAS scores compared to Lindstrom? Alec Lindstrom.
I can try to pull that up really quickly. I imagine that they're pretty similar because, again, they're. I would say Lindstrom is a little smaller, so he would probably need to perform better than Kendall to. Actually, here we go. Oh, sorry, that's Chris. Chris Lindstrom had a 9.85 relative athletic score at the time. It's 9.79 all time, which is crazy good. Alec Lindstrom's was okay. Well, that's weird. It shows the numbers, but doesn't have the size. But Lindstrom was slower in the short shuttle. He was actually a little bit faster in the 3-cone. Lindstrom was also about a tenth of a second slower in the 40-yard dash, but actually a touch faster in the 10-yard split. And he actually had 25 reps on the bench. So a little stronger, a little faster. So that is interesting. But I think generally Kendall has just put together better tape than Lindstrom did coming out, especially him playing in a scheme that doesn't necessarily fit best with his skill set. You're playing this man gap heavy run scheme. He's asked to do a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily favorable to him, but he was able to succeed in it to a pretty decent extent. And when they did do stuff he was better at, pass protection, zone blocking, climbing to the second level, he was excellent at that.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot again. Let's have you project Ozzy Trapillo, Drew Kendall. Who's drafting them?
I think Kendall is easier to project because I think you just have to look at a team that runs a lot of outside zone. So any of the Shanahan McVay tree, even though McVay has kind of shifted more to a duo downhill type of attack, but Niners, Dolphins, I guess the Seahawks now, the Vikings, those kind of teams. I guess maybe the Texans a bit, but like not the Lions, because Lions do a lot of Lions' run game is kind of similar to what BC has done for the last few years, and that's good for a player like Christian Mahogany, not necessarily for Drew Kendall. For Trapillo, I think he's a little less scheme dependent. I think I think he can do most everything you want in kind of any type of scheme. I still think he's better in a, run heavy offense. That said, I'll, again, because you're putting me on the spot with that preparation, I'm just going to say the Patriots, just because that's an easy fit. He's working with Dante Scarnecchia. There's obviously this relationship between Bill O'Brien, Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's kid, Tyler Vrabel, played with Ozzy Trapillo at BC. So, that's the chalk answer, but I don't have any better one at this point. So that's what I'll go with.
Mitch, you're always prepared for everything. So I wanted to make sure
That's
that I
fair.
threw
That's
things
fair.
at you that you were not prepared for.
Nobody's perfect. So
So
now we all learned that.
All right, in our final segment, let's talk a little Cam Horsley. Very little because he didn't do all that much. And then some final thoughts about other BC players that are also preparing for the NFL draft as they get ready for their NFL Pro Day. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. Thank you all who have made us your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And when you're done with this episode, check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin with the new ACC media deal coming up and a potential resolution with Florida State and Clemson. I'm sure he's going to be talking about that tonight. Make sure to check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Cam Horsley, defensive tackle for BC, only participated in one drill?
Two, I believe he did both of the jumps.
He did 2 drills. Talk about his performance, and we don't have a card for him because he didn't do all that much.
Yeah, so since he only did the broad and vertical jump, that doesn't generate enough information to come up with an RAS card. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up his numbers now. I guess I can just go to the article I wrote today, which is on Eagle Insider. Go check that out. So he leaped. Oh, come on. Oh, here we go. 9 feet flat in the broad jump and 31.5 inches in the vertical jump. And those are solid numbers for a nose tackle. He's a, big dude built lower to the ground. Maybe those aren't going to be his best numbers, or those aren't going to be his best drills. He did participate in the positional drills. So all these drills with bags and running around and stuff. And I thought he performed pretty well in those, especially because a lot of the other defensive linemen that were competing, they were slipping a lot, which, you're on a new turf. You're maybe not wearing the right shoes. Apparently the stadium, or the Colts stadium where this is held, they installed a new type of turf this year relative to last year at the combine, where instead of it being like the black rubber pellets you usually see on a turf field, I heard it was made of cork, which it makes for a slower surface, which is interesting. But guys maybe just not ready for that. But Horsley didn't slip at all. He stayed upright, was able to move well in space, which is not even necessarily his calling card, but moved well through the bag drills where they're doing some pass rush reps. And again, I would have liked to see him test more. I imagine that he is kind of still training for that and wants to put his best numbers at BC Pro Day and wants to continue working on that and testing, because those numbers are going to be big for him. Because like I've said in the lead up to the combine, he's a guy that's going to need to show that he is a better athlete than his tape necessarily implies. Because when you watch him at BC the last 2 years, he's this run plugging nose tackle. He's excellent at it. He's bench pressing centers into the backfield multiple times a game. But he just doesn't have much of a pass rush. So he's able to push some centers backwards, but he's not able to, get off them. He's not able to like shoot gaps and get in the backfield and finish. I don't think he had any sacks this year. And if he did, they were like pursuit sacks with the quarterback scrambled up basically into his arms. So, but then, like I said before the combine, at the Shrine Bowl, he looked a lot quicker, had some good pass rush reps. So, I think teams know that he can be a good nose tackle, and that's somewhat valuable, but it's not, that's a late day 3 pick. But if you can show it's okay, I do have this athletic ability where I can be a competent pass rusher, that gets you to say, okay, maybe in the 5th round, maybe even in the 4th round. I somewhat doubt that because it's a very strong defensive tackle class. So I imagine he'll get pushed down a little bit. But, a big pro day for him will go a long way towards getting him more towards being a early to mid day 3 pick as opposed to a late day 3 pick.
All right. And let's wrap things up here. I'm not going to make you tell me where you think Cam Horsley is going to go.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
I would love that because I think he would fit well. But anyways,
any other let's just give me a couple minutes with any other thoughts about some of the other guys that did not go to the draft combine.
So one thing I did forget in the edge rusher discussion, Michael Williams from Georgia is another guy who will definitely go in the first round. He's 6'5", 260, has like 36-inch arms. He played hurt this year, and Georgia kind of played him out of position, but he's just insane. And there were a few reps. I think it was back in the 2022 playoff when Georgia played Ohio State, and he was just mauling Ohio State's offensive tackles. So I think Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones were both in the NFL now, and he was, as a true freshman, destroying these dudes. So he'll be in the first round for sure. But returning to the rest of the combine, the highlight of the weekend for me was when Isaiah Bond, the receiver from Texas, said he was going to break the record for the 40-yard dash and run a 4.1, and he ran a 4.4 flat. And he was, I think, the 10th fastest, or tied for the 9th fastest receiver. It wasn't even the fastest receiver on his own team, as Matthew Golden ran a 4.29. So I just thought that was so funny to, be that brash and then just not being able to back it up whatsoever. But regarding the other guys from BC, I think that Cam Arnold is the guy that the pro day is going to be the most important for. Again, he didn't get any invites to these all-star games. He missed the second half of the season due to injury. And, I've been watching Cam Arnold these last few days, and it's still, especially against Missouri, there's still some rough moments there. But I think that because of his experience and even on special teams, that'll be helpful. He's still a pretty good athlete. And I think there's still steps he could take development-wise to being a, adequate backup linebacker in the NFL. So if he can come to the pro day and show that he is a good athlete, and I imagine that basically for him, he's just been spending the last few months just like training for these tests. So if he can put up some solid numbers, that'd be great. Thinking about the other guys, I'm not really sure Jack Conley is going to be a draft pick. My thoughts on him have been made well known for a long time, so I won't dig the grave any deeper. In terms of the other guys that maybe we haven't really talked about enough, I think it'll be interesting to see what Neto Akpala tests as, because he's kind of been always hailed as a very athletic player. So it'll be interesting to see what he tests as. Trayshawn Ward will be interesting. I wonder if he would even go back to FSU for his pro day, because I'm pretty sure he's from Florida. I imagine he's training there. So I could see him going back there for his pro day. And I think Kai Robichaux will be interesting too, because I imagine they might try to test him at like fullback or something, because again, like long speed is not necessarily his game, or, lateral explosiveness or elusiveness. So, if they could pack 15 to 20 pounds on him, turn him into a fullback, he could carve out a role for himself in the NFL doing that.
Interesting thoughts. Interesting.
I know they did that with Marcus Valdez a few years ago, right? I know they did. I'm pretty sure they did it with Vinny DePaul, but I also think they did it with Marcus Valdez back when he was at the pro day. So I could definitely see them doing that with Kai Robichaux.
And speaking of linebackers, we probably go back in our archives. Yeah, just today, Isaiah McDuffie just signed a 2-year deal, and I don't think if I think you listen to our NFL draft talk back then, what was he, a 7th round draft pick, 6th round draft pick?
He was definitely day 3. I can't remember.
But I believe our conversation about him was he didn't have anything super special, and he ended up.
Back then the discussion was like Max Richardson was the guy who like knew how to play linebacker, did everything right, but like just wasn't a very good athlete and couldn't make some plays. McDuffie was the very good athlete who was aggressive and would overrun plays and make some mistakes, but then he was a younger player, so you end up taking that risk on the guy who's more athletic, and it really panned out for the Packers.
Yep. So good for him. Glad to see that he's being productive. All right, Mitch, let's wrap things up. Where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. I pretty much wrote up almost everything I said in a combine recap that's up on the site now on Eagle Insider. And this week, I'll be publishing my scouting reports on Donovan Ezeiruaku and Ozzy Trapillo. In the coming weeks, we'll have Drew Kendall, Cam Horsley, and then as we keep getting close to the draft, we'll probably get Cam Arnold, maybe Jack Conley, and some other BC guys. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got going on right now.
All right, on tomorrow's show, I already know what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about that new ACC deal with incentives for brands. We'll talk about what that means to BC, if it helps or hurts. I'm also going to talk about Jeff Goodman saying that Earl Grant's not going anywhere, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. Yes. Well, I'll have my thoughts on whether that is actually true or not, and maybe what I think is actually going on. We'll get into that and a whole lot more on tomorrow's show. So make sure you like and subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247, and I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.